must say the land of Sharda Mata, the land of Mangla Mata has been under illegal occupation of Pakistan for the past 75 years. And we have somebody who was born there, who was brought up with ideology of hate towards Bharat, who grew up in the belief that Muslims of this country have been done injustice, and somebody who grew out of it and into realizing his roots, finally coming out as a strong activist, propounding the concept of Akhand Bharat and demanding that the illegally occupied territories rejoin with Mother Bharat. Friends, we have amongst us today Dr. Amjad Ayub Mirza ji, who was born in what we call today as POJK, who has been an activist there. The deep state of Pakistan hounded him. He was arrested. He had to flee. And even now, he is very cautious about sharing his location because the Pakistani ISI is out to get him. Friends, welcome. Let's all welcome Dr. Amjad Ayub Mirza to this evening's discussion with us. Namaste, Mirza ji. A warm welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Friends, as you all know, Nationalist Hub has been focusing on narrative which has been missing in the mainstream media of the country. We are going to focus on bringing back nationalism, love and patriotism for the country, and of course, going back to our roots to revive the roots that we have all been denied all these years. And Dr. Amjad Ayub Mirza has really invested a lot of his time and energy in understanding his roots, his origins, and his love for Bharat is something which is just amazing. Dr. Mirza ji, if I may ask you, you have been an activist and you have set a deadline of 2023 for the return of these occupied territories to homeland Bharat. So can you just tell our viewers what exactly are you planning and how are you mobilizing people in POJK and POGB and all those areas? How are you mobilizing the public opinion to move away from Pakistan and to be part of Bharat?
Well, thank you very much for having me on your show, Giridhar Mamdi Bhai. Actually, you see, we have given a deadline of 22nd of October 2023. And as you would know, that 22nd of October is the date when Pakistan actually launched an unprovoked attack on the state of Jammu and Kashmir, which resulted in the breakup of our state and which resulted in the decision made by Maharaja Hari Singh to secede to India. Therefore, Pakistani occupied Jammu Kashmir and occupied Gilgit Baltistan both by default are part of India, and I am by default as another 4 million of POJK and 1.6 million of Gilgit Baltistan. We are all by default Indian citizens. Now we have come to a breaking point, you see. Enough is enough. Mamdi Bhai, when you are denied your basic human rights, maybe you can live with that. But if you are denied the basic necessities of sustenance for living, you don't have water, you don't have wheat, you don't have electricity, you don't have hospitals. If you have a clinic, it does not have a rabies vaccine, it does not have a snake bite vaccine. Your rivers are diverted in order to supply electricity to Punjab. I mean, you name it, roads. Every day our people are dying because there are no safety walls on the mountainous terrain and nobody's bothered. When it comes to that, and you see that your children have no future, then that point, I say, is when you arrive to a breaking point. We have come to a breaking point. For us, it's a do and die situation or do or die situation. Now, we have given a deadline for Pakistan to vacate occupied territories. that it illegally has. And it is not something that is out of the box that we have come up with, that everyone should be surprised. This is the demand in the first resolution passed by the United Nations Security Council, that Pakistan is an aggressor. Therefore, Pakistan and all aliens should withdraw from Pakistani occupied Jammu Kashmir. So, second part of your question, that how are we preparing? We have been working on this for a very long time. The first obstacle that we were faced with was what I would say in Urdu is called kalme ka rishta, that we have a bond of the kalma with Pakistan. Second was that Hindus and Indians are enemies. And the third was two-nation theory, that Muslims and Hindus are two separate nations. So as you say, that I grew out of this narrative first myself, and I realized with the formation of Bangladesh that if Pakistan, different parts that make Pakistan, if the bond was Kalma, then how come Bangladesh was created? What happened to the bond of Kalma over there? What happened to the two-nation theory there, that the Hindus went and liberated East Pakistan for the Bengalis and handed it over to them and returned? It did not go as an occupying army. It went as a liberation army. It went to help and assist the catalytic process of liberation of a whole nation that was besieged by the Punjabi army. So that Kalme ka Rishta illusion gone there. The second is Hindus are your enemies. If Hindus are our enemies, then how come our enemy is coming to assist more than a nation of whom more than 250,000 women were gang raped by Muslims, not by Hindus? So how can Hindu be my enemy? The third is two-nation theory. Now that took a while to clear my head about that and get around it, because you have to understand that nation state is a modern concept, and nation state is built on market. It's about markets. It's about national boundaries, that this is the national boundary of our country, and we will have a uniform tax system, custom duty system, and chungi and all that. So it has nothing to do with religion. It is to do with culture, with geography, with language, with memory, with heritage. And how come we share the same heritage in the subcontinent? And so how can we be two different nations? It's impossible. So this is what I call counter narrative. We built this counter narrative and we succeeded in that because we are talking common sense. We are not talking rocket science, So people started to question Pakistan's Kalme ka Rishta, Pakistan's propaganda against India, Pakistan's propaganda about two-nation theory, and they said that, well, if we are two nations, then it's the Gilgitis and the Punjabis are two nations. If we are two nations, then yes, the Pakistani Jamwals and Kashmiris and Punjabis, we are two different separate nations who think different, who eat different, who wear different, who do everything different. So now we have overcome the first obstacle, which was to smash the Pakistani false narrative. And now we are in the second phase where our narrative is gaining momentum. And you can see that all over POJK and POGB, people are talking about reunion with India, which was not possible, which was unthinkable only a decade ago. And the third phase is 22nd of October 2023, that we want our lands to be liberated. And people ask me what will happen on 2023, 22nd October. I say, well, wait and see then. You prepare yourself, we are preparing ourselves. Let's see what happens. But it's a do or die situation, Mamdi bhai.
Wonderful, wonderful. That gives us a lot of hope. But Mirza ji, if we go back into history, wasn't it the Gilgit Scouts under the leadership of Captain Brown who killed the governor of Maharaja killed his army, and the Sikh and Hindu soldiers who were sleeping were slaughtered in the night, and the entire area was handed over to Pakistan on a platter. So isn't that kind of an anti-Bharat, anti-Hindu narrative which existed then and which was fed over these years? Is it not still strong there? How are they prepared to accept Bharat?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Gilgit Baltistan and the Gilgit Scouts. Today, I have written an article which is called Rajnath Singh's statement on POJK and the tasks ahead. And I have detailed all the events that took place, that how the British forcefully gave Gilgit Baltistan to Pakistan when they saw that the Indian troops were pushing Pakistan army back into their own territory. I think that the people of Gilgit Baltistan have never hated India. They never. There is no evidence. You can say that the people of Gilgit Baltistan fought against the Dogras of Jammu because they considered the Dogras of Jammu as as a ruling class. So in that sense, yes, they might have some qualms about joining Jammu Kashmir. That's why I say that the state of Jammu and Kashmir, as it was before 1947, can now never be, reconstituted in its original form. The only solution is that Gilgit Baltistan joins Ladakh and we join back with our Matar Bhumi and Jammu Kashmir. But even today, there is a movement independent of my narrative, independent of my influence. There is a movement in Gilgit Baltistan around open Kargil Skardu Road. Skardu Kargil Road Kholo. There's a movement, whole movement. And what does that signify? That signifies that people, because of the repression of Pakistani regime, cannot openly say that we want to join India. So they find ways to express themselves, and they say Skardu Kargil Road Kholo, Skardu Kargil Road Kholo, so that this road is open and they can kind of join. And I know a lot of Gilgit Baltistan people and political parties, nationalist parties, who agree with me, but they say that we are under the fourth schedule, we cannot openly speak. If we speak, we will be taken away.
I think now that you raised issues about Skardu, can you throw some light on the demographic changes that have happened in Gilgit Baltistan, especially in Gilgit Baltistan since 1947? I think it was predominantly Shia, if I'm not wrong. And now I think it become more of Sunni. And even the trans LOC movement, which was agreed, was probably confined to the Sunni areas. You had the Poonch Rawla Court and you had Udi, Chakoti, both are Sunni. Whereas the Sharda corridor for Hindus was not opened, nor the Shia corridor for Kargil and Skardu was opened, right? So if you could throw light on the culture of Gilgit Baltistan, I know it's predominantly Shia, but also if you could throw some light on the Hindu part of it. Like you have Sharda, you have Mangla, you have other probably Hindu Astha, places of Astha. Maybe if you could throw the religious demography of this place, what has changed in the last 75 years?
You see, this is a very sensitive issue and very emotional issue, because most people do not realize how much have we lost, how much massacre has taken place. I just give you an example. 25th of November 1947, my city of Mirpur was under siege by the Pakistan army. The Jammu Kashmir regiment had already withdrawn from Mirpur, and the people of Mirpur, the whole district, the whole district of Mirpur, more than 100,000 Hindus and Sikhs refused to leave to go to Jammu for safety, because they were expecting that Nehruji is going to send Indian troops straight through Uri into Muzaffarabad and also especially into Mirpur. But that never happened. And not a single Hindu survived. Out of 100,000 and something Hindus and Sikhs, 1,600 were rescued by the Red Cross. And the stories, I'm not going to go into the detail of the atrocities that took place. Yeah, some other time maybe. So the first demographic change was in my own city, where all of a sudden there is no Hindu, there is no Sikh. There are Muslims everywhere from Punjab, Pathans from KPK. So that demographic change continued right all the way into the 50s. And today there's not a single Hindu or Sikh in Pakistani occupied Jammu Kashmir, or for that matter, in Pakistani occupied Gilgit Baltistan. 25% of the population of Gilgit Baltistan is now Shia settlers, Sunni settlers who have been brought in from Punjab and from KPK. They control all the businesses, they control all the wealth, you know. So in POJK, the Punjab madrasas and the Punjab army and the KPK madrasas, they have set up terrorist training camps, you know, and they have set up launch pads. I mean, Mamdi ji, you are very well informed and you visit Kashmir quite so often. I mean, we are by nature very peaceful people. We do not fight, we do not murder, we do not steal most of the time. I mean, exceptions are there, but generally speaking, we are a very peaceful people. But today, Pakistani occupation has turned a very, very peaceful people into a very violent opposition to occupation. How come? Because, as I said earlier in your show, enough is enough. They have not left one single aspect of our lives in POJK or POGB that has not been affected by this occupation. Demographic changes, Shia Sunni interfaith riots, you know, killing in the name of Islam, ruining our land by chopping off our forests. We had 42% of forest land in POJK. Today, it's less than 14%. Similarly, there are 250 glaciers in Gilgit Baltistan, but there is no drinking water. Aliyabad has no drinking water, and Hunza has no drinking water. And then there are landslides, and then there are these floods, and the crops that we have, a few crops, they are, you know, washed away, trees are washed away. And in other parts of Gilgit Baltistan, then reports are coming that the trees and the crops are dying because there is no water for them, no irrigation water. So we don't have irrigation water, we don't have drinking water. Oh, bhai, kitna zulm karoge? Kitna zulm karoge? Kab tak bardasht kare? So enough is enough. That's it. 22nd of October 2023. Get out. Simple.
I was just wondering, you know, you're repeatedly using this term POJK, unlike a lot of people who call it POK, which is wrong actually. Technically it is actually Western Jammu. Maybe save the small area around Sharda where you can call that Kashmir. I think rest of it is not Kashmir. Kashmir, I don't think is with Pakistan, right? So if you could talk about the language demographics, are there any Kashmiri speaking people there? What about the Shina language of Astor and Baltistan area? What about all these languages which existed in the parts occupied by Pakistan? If you could throw some light about it, and also what is the fate of them today?
Well, first of all, you very rightly pointed out that most of the POJK, yani Pakistani occupied Jammu Kashmir, was part of the Jammu province. So this is West Jammu. Muzaffarabad and Sharda, they can be included in Kashmir, but most of it is West Jammu. That's why Pakistani occupied Jammu Kashmir. Whereas the language demography, we don't have a Dogri script anymore. We cannot write Dogri, so in some areas of Jammu, people still do speak Dogri. I mean, Pakistani occupied Jammu. And Kashmiri language, there is no script there. It's not taught in the schools or colleges. And when it comes to Gilgit Baltistan, in Gilgit Baltistan, people still use Brushiski and Shina languages. They do talk in that, but on a state level, it is not sponsored to be taught in the universities or colleges or schools. There are no cultural events to promote the local languages. And once we are liberated, then these things will be taken care of.
You come from the town of Mirpur, right? So what I see, or rather most of us see, especially in UK, the most bitter anti-Bharat forces are actually Mirpuris. They're not Pakistanis, they're actually Mirpuris. You see most of them coming and doing demonstrations in front of our embassy, or all that. Why is this intense hate for Bharat in Mirpuris? Technically, as you said, they should be Indian citizens. So why just Mirpuris have this kind of a hatred? And how have your efforts yielded anything? You've been working among your fellow Mirpuris. Have you seen any change among them? Do you have any hope from Mirpuris?
You see, one of the reasons that Mirpuris have been, observed as anti-India in Britain is because after the partition, when Mangla Dam was made and people were uprooted from their lands, all of the Mirpur's villages, they all came over to Britain and settled in Birmingham, Manchester, Nottingham, Bradford, because there was textile industry here, there was cycle industry here, there were jobs here. So that's why there are clusters of Mirpuris in Britain. And then when Pakistan started, using these people who were carrying Pakistani passports but were from Mirpur as their cannon fodder for protests against Bharat in Britain. So they went for it. And वही कलमे का रिश्ता, हिंदू जो है उससे नफरत, and two nation theory, they worked very well on an emotional level. But today, the Mirpuris are asking, why is there no airport in Mirpur? When they go back, they have to go to Islamabad airport and then take a taxi for 3 or 4 hours drive into the mountains to get to Mirpur. So they are questioning a lot of things, and there is a lot of support for our narrative in Mirpur. Mirpur, the largest opposition that is not allowed to take part in elections, by the way, is based in Mirpur. And Mirpur is it's going. You will see that it is no more than a myth now that Mirpuris are anti-India. You see the protests in Britain over the past few years, especially after the abrogation of 370 and 35A, have shrunk, and people do not go and do not participate in those protests as much as they used to, despite the fact that the whole of the UK Mosque Network and ISI and the High Commission and the Consulates of Pakistan, they all come together to organize these events against India. Mirpuris are not attending them.
Now let's shift the topic to a larger canvas. What is happening in Pakistan today? We see a lot of political turmoil there, economic meltdown, divisions in the army, then so-called Tanzeems, or the religious fundamental groups like TTP, TLP, and even Imran Khan turning to becoming a very religious polarizing figure. How do you see the canvas panning out in Pakistan as a whole today, and how do you see the road ahead for it? Do you see, give it a couple of years, 5 years, 10 years, or do you think the big powers are going to bail it out because it's a nuclear power? How do you see this whole canvas as it stands today?
Well, Pakistan basically is, for me, Pakistan has gone bankrupt already, but they're not declaring it. And the problem with Pakistan is that Pakistan does not have a nationalist kind of far-sighted government or political party. They are all like working on ad hoc solutions. आज ऐसा कर लो, कल वैसा कर लो, इससे पैसे पकड़ लो, उससे पैसे पकड़ लो. States cannot be run like that, you see. So first of all, Pakistan has never focused on building industrial base based on cottage industry, a flourishing cottage industry. जो थोड़ी बहुत थी, toys industry थी, shoemaking industry थी, या इस किस्म की, China has wiped it out because Pakistan did not put heavy tariffs on Chinese products. They were cheaper, so the local cottage industry manufacturer they disappeared. Because there is no cottage industry, there can be no small industry, because cottage industry is the foundation of small industry, and then the small industry is the foundation of heavy industry. So there is no industrialization. Secondly, there has never been an effort to mechanize agriculture. So agriculture is still being done the way it used to be done 5,000 years ago. So there's no productivity there. Then because it's not mechanized, now the irrigation canals are linked with agricultural, productivity. And if you don't clean your canals and your, river beds, then there are floods, because the mud and the sand that comes with the flow of the river and the canals settles and raises the base of that canal or that river. And when there are monsoons, the water has nowhere else to go other than into the fields, and it destroys the crops. So at any level, Pakistan has never taken any heed in trying to address these issues, and has been borrowing money. And then a factor that emerged in Pakistan's economy was the interference of the Pakistan military in Pakistan's economy. I mean, from producing cereals to weapons to clothes to banking sector to property sector, everywhere armies, foundations and armies, enterprises have taken over. And so the private sector that was supposed to grow in a civilian, under a civilian parliament's authority and a civilian parliament's guidance, never took place. So there is no private industrial base. It's all run by the military oligarchy. So that then has again brought in corruption in the high icons of power. Generals are very corrupt. I'm not talking about the common soldier, poor guy who has to pay 1,000 rupees to his subedar, even if he has to take a leave to visit his family. But corruption of the army. That's why I say this army is not a fighting army. It's a corrupt army. They are property dealers. They are commission agents. So on one hand, you have an army who's not nationalist anymore, whose nationalism is directly proportionate to how much profit this state can give them, in terms of budgets and cuts and kickbacks and stuff. And on the other hand, you do not have an independent private sector that could, so you don't have a public sector industry and you don't have a private sector. So that is how Pakistan today has brought itself to its knees, and there is no way out of this. There is totally no way out of this unless Pakistan declares itself bankrupt and starts clean. But who's going to do that? Imran Khan is a religious demagogue. He is a narcissist. He is a fascist-minded person who cannot see anything beyond his own nose. And so there is Pakistan. I feel sorry for the people of Pakistan because they have been very unlucky in terms of economy, politics, and social infrastructure.
And what about the terrorism angle, that the extreme Islamic Tanzeems that have come up? Even a guy like Maulana Fazlur Rahman has become irrelevant today. I mean, so many TLPs, TTPs, so many have taken over, right? How do you see this societal degradation in Pakistan?
You shall sow what you, you shall reap what you sow. So they sow this madrasa culture in Pakistan for money, because they saw an opportunity when Afghanistan was invaded by Soviet Union. The Pakistani military saw an opportunity to make a few bucks. So they created this Mujahideen, which became Taliban, which became TTP and all sorts of, terrorist organizations. But they all spring out from the fact that Pakistan military created them with the consent of the CIA and the British government in order to counter Afghanistan. But now it has become a proxy of Pakistan army, not only against India, but also against the democratic forces inside Pakistan who are anti-military. These proxies are used against them. You can see how Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan was used against Nawaz Sharif, against Imran Khan, against any person who challenges or tries to challenge the military hegemony over the economy or the generals. So situation in Pakistan has gone from bad to worse. But then again, I would say that majority of the people of Pakistan, they are not fascists. They are not, like extremists. They are just common human beings like me and you, who just want to earn a bring bread and butter on the table.
Yeah, Dr. Mirza, I was just also wanting to check, what are your views? You spoke about some issues with regard to international issues also. How do you see Chinese influence in especially Gilgit Baltistan, or for that matter, the larger Pakistan itself? Because they seem to be investing a lot in CPEC, which is actually going nowhere, but then billions of dollars are sunk. So would China keep quiet if something happens to Pakistan? Would they not take away Gilgit Baltistan like they have taken away Shaksgam Valley or something like that? Maybe Pakistan would give away large chunks of Gilgit Baltistan to pay out for their debts. How do you see this Chinese angle in POGB or POJK, or in Pakistan as a whole?
There is a grave danger that Pakistan will barter Gilgit Baltistan with China against unpending repayments of the loans they have already acquired from China. In POJK, already People's Liberation Army of China has its presence. There are about 6,000 of them there, disguised as engineers and as consultants and all that. Along the line of control, it was reported only last week that Chinese are helping Pakistan army to build bunkers at the line of control. So China is very much involved, and yes, there is a threat, and they are bringing in 15th Amendment in POJK, which will eliminate any chances of any empowerment to the local legislative assembly, for that matter. And all of this is being done in consultations with the Chinese ambassador sitting in Islamabad. Chinese ambassador now has got more authority when it comes to Pakistan government or policy making than even the American ambassador. And we think that India will have to act promptly. Otherwise, Pakistan is desperate for cash, and they don't give monkeys about Gilgit Baltistan, whether it stays with Pakistan or it goes with China. Whereas Pakistan is concerned, China has already refused to issue any new loans to Pakistan, and they have conditioned it with the IMF loan, which means that they have said that if IMF gives loan to Pakistan, then China might consider giving loans to Pakistan. And why does China say that? Because China knows that if IMF gives like $1 or $2 billion loan to Pakistan, then that loan can be used to repay outstanding debts of China. But other than that, China has offered to buy shares in national assets of Pakistan, including maybe the nuclear assets. So Pakistan is a colony of China, and Chinese are directly involved in the genocide of Baloch people in Balochistan. And there is no chance that CPAC is going anywhere until these regional issues, very serious regional issues, are addressed. G.
That you raised the issue of Baluchis, there is armed resistance going on in Balochistan, and you would say semi armed resistance in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Maybe the Pakistan Tehfuz, the Pashtun Tehfuz movement is not violent, but then Pakistan Tehrik-e-Taliban is picked up arms. Whereas you see in Gilgit Baltistan or in POJK, you don't have any armed resistance. When insurgencies with armed resistance in Balochistan and KPK are unable to really make significant progress against the state of Pakistan, do you think without any armed resistance, Gilgit Baltistan and POJK will be able to cause any challenges to the state of Pakistan?
Well, you see, it depends on how Pakistan, how much violence Pakistan is prepared to conduct in Pakistani occupied Jammu Kashmir and Gilgit Baltistan. Because if Pakistani army confronts the protesters in POJK or POGB with bullets, then bullets will not only be coming from one side, they will be coming from more than one side. And there will be casualties as well on the side of Pakistan army. But I don't see that happening in the near future. Balochistan, there is armed resistance going on. More than one group is involved in that, and they are very successful. And they have yesterday they fired 2 rockets in the army cantonment in Quetta, caused loss of lives and damage to the property. And Balochistan is a gone case as far as Pakistan is concerned. Balochistan cannot be contained any longer. It's just a matter of time. Whereas Pashtun Tahfuz movement is concerned, Pashtun Tahfuz movement has become kind of ineffective, if I may be allowed to use that word. But the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan is the main organization that is confronting Pakistan right now. And the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan is not going to stop their offensive against Pakistan until the whole of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa right up to Attock border is freed from Pakistani occupation and merged back with India. Because if you remember, in 1893, there was a Durand Line agreement between British India and King of Afghanistan. And that agreement was signed for 100 years. Those 100 years have been completed in 1993. So since 1993, the Durand Line, which is a kind of a border area between Afghanistan and Pakistan, has no loci standi. It's no more legal because it was not renegotiated between the government of Pakistan and the government of Afghanistan. So legally speaking and technically speaking, all of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is occupied territory, and its occupier is Pakistan. And that is what the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan are fighting for. And that's why they've got their bases in Afghanistan, and they are supported by the Afghan Taliban. So Pakistan is in a very bad state at the moment, and Pakistan cannot negotiate its way out of these issues peacefully. So which means that in future, as you rightly pointed out, there may be armed conflict between the people of POJK and the people and the Pakistan army.
I think I somewhere read a recent report also. I think Taliban has introduced a new national anthem, which said Afghanistan extends from Badakhshan to Attock. they've included the name of Attak in that. So I don't think even Pakistan's own creation, Taliban, recognizes the Durand line. So let's take it the next step. If you have to look into your crystal ball and make some guesses, how long would you give to the current legal entity of Pakistan? Do you think its balkanization is inevitable, or would it be like a let's say Ethiopia or Somalia, a failed state but still a united Pakistan which will go on for long? How do you see the future of Pakistan?
Well, first of all, I don't have a crystal ball, and secondly, how long is a piece of thread? It's very hard to give a timeline of the final disintegration of Pakistan as a state, but I think that it already is in a state like Ethiopia. It is being held together with the barrel of the gun. It's not being held together democratically. The Baloch are fighting for their independence. The Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan is up in arms against Pakistan army. The Sindhis are asking for freedom. We, the people of POJK and POGB, want to go back and join Mother India. So it's only a matter of time. The question is, how long is it going to take for India to act and to seriously put a plan on the table for getting back POJK and POGB, because the way towards Akhand Bharat is via POJK and POGB. There's no other route. If you really believe in the theory and the concept and the ideology of Akhand Bharat, then you cannot ignore the fact that a legal part of Akhand Bharat, forget about Afghanistan, Indonesia, Vietnam, Cambodia, the legal part of India is being occupied by Pakistani army, which is in itself a great should be a great humiliation for 1.4 billion people in India, that a tiny country with a tiny army, which is splitting at its seams, is holding ransom 5.6 million people. It's an embarrassment. So Indian government will have to come up with a concrete plan to win back the territorial parts that are under the occupation of Pakistan.
Well, I think the recent statement by our Honorable Defense Minister Rajnath Singh indicated in as many words that we haven't forgotten POJK, and that Ma Sharda is there, and you can't have Amarnath on this side of the line of control and Sharda Mata on the other side of the line of control. So is the case with our Home Minister Amit Shah ji, when he had spoken about giving up, sacrificing our blood, spilling our blood, or giving life to retake areas under Pakistani occupation. He said that in the parliament itself. While we hear such nice statements, what else do you want the state of Bharat, the government of India to do, and the people of this country to do more than what they have said till now? What exactly are the concrete steps that you're looking for from the government and the people so that we can reintegrate these territories under illegal occupation?
First of all, I think that I should be invited to come to India to address different rallies and seminars all over India in the major towns and cities to explain why is it important that POJK and POGB should be brought back into the folds of the Republic of Indian Union. And secondly, I think there are elections being spoken about in Jammu Kashmir, and we have got 24 seats. So those seats now should be, at least, if not filled up, but some representation from POJK and POGB should be given in those legislative assembly, and also in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. That should be the next concrete steps, if you want me to say immediate concrete steps. So these three steps that I've mentioned, I think they should be now followed up with.
I think there are some people in Jammu and Kashmir also who have kind of raised this with the government, asking them to provide representation to the territories under Pakistani occupation. Dr. Mirza, I'm sure you know that whenever elections to the state of Jammu and Kashmir are announced, the Election Commission of India, in its notification, speaks about those seats. But it says since they are under Pakistani occupation, we are unable to hold elections there, and so we are not holding elections this time. Every election, the notification mentions about those seats. But like what you said, probably, some kind of representation would definitely help. How do you see other international challenges to your cause? Britain, for instance, is the major culprit through Captain Brown for having given away Gilgit Baltistan to Pakistan. And the US was behind Great Britain in denying land access between Nehru's India and Soviet Union, as you know. So given this, do you think internationally your cause will be supported? And if the Indian stand of wanting to take it back will resonate, how do you see? You're sitting in Europe, you've seen a lot of voices in Geneva and other places. How do you see the other international views, maybe Soviet Union, Europe, US, and that kind of worldwide opinion about on your cause?
Well, first of all, I think that we cannot put America and Britain in the same boat when it comes to resolving the Jammu Kashmir issue, because the Americans from day one have been supportive of Jammu Kashmir being part of India. The British have been supportive of Jammu Kashmir being part of Pakistan, because it was the British and not the Americans who wanted to deny access to India, to the Central Asian republics, because it was a communist Soviet Union at that time. However, the Americans were against the ceasefire that Nehru initiated, and they were asking questions. The UN delegates at the UN Security Council meeting in Paris in 1948 raised this question of why do we need a ceasefire when India is winning? So Americans, I think, are going to be supportive of us, and they will support the concept that Jammu Kashmir should be reunited with, India. But the British, on the other hand, look at Pakistani occupied Jammu Kashmir and Gilgit Baltistan as key strategic locations when it comes to denying India direct access to Central Asia, and they want to keep POJK and POGB in the folds of Pakistan so that the British can manipulate against China and Central Asia. So there could be a problem with the British, but we have a legal document that was signed on the 26th of October 1947. So what's the big deal? Nobody can do anything. Bhai shaadi hui hai na, to nikahnaama to hamare paas maujood hai. So what's the big deal? I don't care about the rest of the world, what they think. I care about my people who are dying because there's no food, who are dying of thirst because there's no water, who are dying because there's no safety walls and the car accidents happen. Coaches full of people, they fall into the ravines and people die. That is my prime concern, not what the rest of the world thinks about us.
I think well said. And maybe just to round it off, if you could just, in conclusion, tell us the role of Afghanistan and Iran in, resolving this headache called Pakistan, or for that matter, the issue of occupied Jammu Kashmir. How do you see the role of Afghanistan and Iran, so that we can have a...
Well, Afghanistan, traditionally Afghanistan, even the Taliban have always had a soft corner for India. They have always preferred India to Pakistan. I give you a small example. In Afghanistan, there was a wheat crisis last year, and Pakistan sent them wheat, and the Afghan envoy complained that the wheat was absolutely rubbish and could not be consumed. Whereas India sent, I think, 50,000 tons of wheat, and they said that the Indian wheat is of extremely high quality. So, this is just to give you an example. So they have great regard for India, and the Taliban in Afghanistan, when they came to power, they have said that none of the projects that India was running in Afghanistan are going to be stopped. They can continue till the completion. So I think that Afghans will support the accession of POGB and POJK to India. Iran is concerned. Iran would have no objection, because they have seen how the Shia majority living in Gilgit Baltistan has been treated by Pakistan, massacred. Their leaders have been murdered in the name of Islam, and they call them kafirs. Whereas in India, the Shias are, playing a leading role in the society in every aspect, in the army, as doctors, as engineers, as lecturers, professors, YouTubers, you name it, they are everywhere. And they have no issue with the Hindus, or Hindus having any issue with the Shias. And traditionally as well, if you see that it was Muhammad, Prophet of Islam, his family that seek refuge in the Hindu Sindh under Raja Dahir. So I think that Iran will have no objection, and Iran wants, like other countries in the neighborhood, wants to have better relations with India. And we should not be worried about Iran, that Iran would side with Pakistan. It would never happen.
Wonderful. And thank you, Dr. Mirza, for sparing time today and talking to us. And hope to see you in Bharat pretty soon. I'm sure a lot of people here, you have a lot of fan following in this country for sure. And you are greatly admired and loved in this country. And I'm sure when you eventually come here, you would have a lot of people to talk to, and we will probably try and meet you up in Jammu, probably in Srinagar, and travel along with you to many places in this country. We are keenly looking forward to your visit to this country very soon.
Thank you very much.
And you do take care of yourself. We know that ISI is behind you, and you've got to be cautious.
Not behind me. ISI is after me. Yeah.
Well, we pray to Ma Sharda to protect you and
Yes.
give you strength in your cause, and hopefully we shall get back all those lost territories not too long from now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and Jai Shri Ram and Jai Hind.
Namaste, namaste. And viewers, that was Dr. Amjad Ayub Mirza ji, a staunch Bharatiya nationalist who was unfortunately or fortunately born on the wrong side of the line of control, yet fighting for reuniting Mahabharat, the Akhand Bharat. So please do like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and share this video to many people, so that the whole of the nation understands what we have lost and what our purpose should be, what our focus should be in getting back those holy territories of Akhand Bharat that the Nehruvian government had ceded to Pakistan. Hopefully, we will see him in our country pretty soon. Namaste.